this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host. My guest this evening is Jack Cross, Superintendent of Schools for the Town of Clinton. Jack, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, Peter. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for coming down. How have you been?
Very well.
Good.
Very well. Busy, but
good.
Very well.
All right. Now, we're here tonight to talk about the budget, but before we do that, let's give an update on what's going on with the new Morgan High School.
Very good. The progress is being seen every day.
Okay.
The winter proved, although difficult in January and February, the fall was a great time for them to be able to get a lot of the site work done and most of the concrete work done.
Okay.
And since the weather has started to improve, they've been fast working on completing the steel portion of the structure. And by the end of this week, the last of the steel will be completed. So the entire structure will be framed out, concrete and steel. And then they'll start pouring floors.
Okay.
And then they'll start the exterior block work. And then the brickwork will go, and then they'll have it all closed up. I think the intent is to have it all closed up and ready to do all the interior work before the snow flies in next fall.
Aha.
Next winter. And the goal is we're still on target for opening school in the fall of 2016.
All right.
So it's a very exciting time to, we meet on a weekly basis on Wednesday mornings to get progress updates and do a variety of things that I had no idea about initially, in terms of, all of the steps and procedures. We spent a lot of time with the design work up front, working very closely with the architects, and now working with our owner's rep and the construction manager to make sure all the pieces fall into place. There's all kinds of work that's done from the drawings, and then the subcontractors meet with the contract manager or the construction manager and the owner's rep and varying other folks, myself included. The first selectman is there at each of these meetings, and we really walk through every piece of the program for the building, from doors to keys to window locks and all of the air handling, how that is going to fit in the ceiling, all of those things, all the little details that continue to be refined as you go through the process. It's quite fascinating.
Now, as far as I'm assuming it's going to be more up to date and more modern than the old Morgan High School.
Correct.
What are some of the differences?
The key things is that the architectural designing, the state requires high levels of energy efficiency.
Sure.
So while we're not using solar particularly, we are using a very highly efficient, what they call a chill beam system for heating and cooling. And they're suggesting that somewhere between 35 and 45% more efficient than the existing building. All right. Annually, that should have some pretty significant savings for the district.
And I'm assuming that they're going to one gymnasium, two gymnasium, or?
Well, again, part of the design element for the facility was to focus on maintaining some levels of the current programming. So, for example, we have a full-sized auditorium that will seat a full school.
Yep.
I think at this point we're at 700 seats, so it's a tad smaller than the current one.
Right.
But the intent was to be able to also then host or house any outside opportunities and concerts, ballet, whatever, that might come into town, which we've currently been able to do because of the size of the auditorium.
Exactly.
The added feature will be that the auditorium will be air conditioned so that it can be used straight through the summer.
Wow.
In the past, that was problematic. We currently have two gyms, and the intent was ultimately to have similar amount of space so you could have multiple things going on, but we ultimately opted for what would be considered an oversized or tournament-sized gym, so they can be divided into two portions so that you can run multiple activities, but you can also have it's big enough to be able to run tournaments, regionally, to be able to do the shoreline championships games and those kinds of things. Ultimately, it's about 20,000 square feet smaller than the original building.
Okay.
And so, there's some efficiencies there as well. And parts of it will be 3 stories and parts of it will be 2 stories.
Very nice.
Probably the biggest thing, some of this project got delayed a little bit, but in that delay process, we were able to work with the state to increase the reimbursement rate for the school.
Okay.
So we're at 43% reimbursement rate. And then last year about this time, we also applied for a space waiver so that we actually got more reimbursement for more of the square footage as opposed to what the standard would be. So all told, it's about an $11 million savings to the local taxpayers.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Now we're talking about the new school. Obviously, with the new school, let's talk about the budget.
So
Yes.
every year we start with back in October preparing the budget for the next year. So essentially 14, 15 months in advance of the
Right.
the new school year, and the budget ultimately starts with working with the administrators and taking a look at programmatic needs, goals for the district, goals for each of the individual buildings, looking at staffing requirements and enrollment.
Okay.
That's kind of where it starts.
All right.
Ultimately, each of the 9 cost centers develop a budget based on their particular needs and goals.
Okay.
We bring all that together. I review it with the assistant superintendent and when we have a business manager, now that we have one, a business manager will be part of that process as well going forward. Okay. And then ultimately we pare it down, we refine it, and present it to the Board of Ed. We do a series of budget workshops with the Board of Ed.
Sure.
Each of the cost centers presents their budget, which is something we started 3 years ago.
All right.
And then ultimately I take the total budget and do a presentation for both the Board of Ed initially. Once they approve it, I take that budget to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to be approved or to be reviewed. They add their thoughts to the process, and then each of those boards in succession, the Board of Selectmen, then the Board of Finance, either approves or makes an adjustment and goes forward. And then next week, for example, or this week on April 8th, Wednesday, we will have the annual budget hearing, which is an opportunity for everyone to make their comments about the town budget, the board budget, and then it goes to referendum in May.
Yes. Now, as far as, you mentioned this, the assistant superintendent of schools, who is Marianne O'Donnell.
That's
How
correct.
is she?
She's doing very well, thank
Good,
you.
Good.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that I was not aware of. A business manager?
Yes, sir.
Sure. All right, thank you.
For this, in last year's budget, we made recommendation for a business manager for the Board of Ed, and the town ultimately made a recommendation to have a director of finance full-time, 2 full-time positions, which had been a shared responsibility with one person trying to do both roles. And in the short period of time that we've had a business manager since January, it took us a little while to actually find one.
Yeah.
But January 5th, Carolyn Dickey, who is our new business manager, came on board, and between the work that she's done and the work that the technology director has done with looking at grants, looking at E-rate reimbursements, we've applied for a preschool grant, we've applied for a technology grant, and again, a technology, and we're in the process of applying for a security grant. And then the E-rate. And we're seeing some benefits of the savings in that regard, at least from a standpoint of reimbursement, that things that we weren't aware of or we weren't looking for, again, not having the resources to do so, we've had an opportunity to explore ways to save some more money.
Now, you said you guys have a technology director?
Correct. We've always had, his name is Frank Rossi.
Okay.
We've always had a technology director, but again, that was at one point about an 80-20 split role,
Okay.
where 80% for the Board of Ed. And when John Crovo, you probably
Sure.
remember John when you were
Sure.
in Morgan.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
he retired, and we looked at the job descriptions for both, again, worked with the town in terms of really looking at what were the needs. And with the growth of technology in town, with having been able to put the full infrastructure, the fiber optic infrastructure in place, and the increasing need for technology in a school system to really meet the needs of students and teachers, we felt that there was a real benefit to having a full-time business or a full-time technology director for the schools, as well as on the town side, given the increase in technology use and the expansion on that level with the police department, the town, the DPW, et cetera, there was a need for, to increasing the amount of time that the technology person on the town side, Chuck Ventnor,
Sure. Yep.
you know Chuck,
I know Chuck, sure.
was able to do. So.
Now, how's the business manager handling the budget?
So she came on board about halfway through the process.
All right, sure.
And so she and I have been really going through that budget, as before we did the final presentation, so
sure.
that she was fully apprised of, how it all works. At this point, she's doing a lot of work with the current budget,
Okay.
and making sure we're in the process of transitioning to a new finance software. So she's getting up to speed with that and making sure that, as we move forward, that will roll out smoothly.
Okay.
It's been delayed a little bit. We're probably realistically, our intent is to be able to get the software up and running so that we can start to do some parallel work in January of next year, and then in the fall of what would be, or the new school year, 16, sorry, 16,
okay,
17, that, we'd have the new software up and running.
Now, I'm gonna ask you, with the recent winter that we had, how much fun is it being a superintendent, figuring out what to do at school?
Well, as you are well aware, we had several Monday storms that
Yes.
caused lots of angst. We have been very fortunate with collaboration with the Department of Public Works, who does a great job
Sure.
with our roads in town.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate to be able to limit our number of days out of school to only 5. So we're in much better shape than many schools, but it's lots of fun.
You know what, though? We're going to talk about that when we come back. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Certainly.
All right, we'll be right back.
Wake the sun, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, sitting here with Superintendent of Schools for the Town of Clinton, Jack Cross. Jack, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I was wondering, we talked a little bit about, in the first segment, the budget for the Board of Education. I was wondering if maybe we can start the second segment and pick up and maybe get into a little bit more detail on the budget and how exactly the budget is formulated and
Sure.
all that fun stuff.
So the Board of Ed budget is really broken down into 3 parts.
Okay.
There's an operation budget, there's a capital budget, and then a debt service budget. And working backwards, the debt service budget is not something we have a whole lot of control over. It's a number, it's a dollar amount that is figured out through actuarial accounting, based on loans on past projects that were done in the system. So that it's an amount of money that is paying off principal and interest of essentially loans to do any kind of building projects previously. Obviously, with the new high school, there will be some increase in the debt service as that goes forward. Sure. This year, the projected debt service is $833,000. It's about $166,000 more than the current year's budget. The capital budget is part of a 10-year plan. The town asks that all departments create a 10-year capital budget, an improvement budget. This includes everything from technology replacement cycles. We're on a 4 or 5 year replacement cycle for computers, for varying support technology for that, the servers and the and such, as well as now with the advent of more increased requirements for security cameras and such for that, the entry systems and all of that fall into that 10-year plan, recycle or replacement plan. We also have a number of projects. So for this upcoming year, we have a boiler project at Pearson that will need to be replaced. So those kinds of items are in this 10-year plan.
Sure.
Roofs, for example, are also part of a 10-year plan. And then as they come up each year, we assess and analyze and to make a determination as what we're going to put forward in that individual annual capital budget. This year's capital budget is $459,000. It's about an $89,000 increase over last year's or this current year's budget. And that process is done separately from the other pieces. So the first part, the debt service, is done by an actuarial, and it's a number presented to the selectmen, which is then presented to us. The capital budget, we build on this 10-year plan and then refine it each year as an annual capital budget, and then present it to a capital expenditure committee, which is a subcommittee ultimately of the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen. And then they forward it to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, and it's approved at each of those steps, and then ultimately becomes part of the total education budget.
All right.
The last piece, and the part that I spend the most time with, is the operations budget. This year, or for 2015-16, our operation budget is projected to be $33 million. It's a I'm sorry, that's not, I backed up here. The operations budget is actually a $31 million budget, $31,747,588, and that represents a 1.48% increase over the current year's budget. All those taken together, the total budget is for the Board of Ed will be $33,040,331, and that represents a 2.23% over the current year's budget. So those are the component parts.
Right.
That's how we. And I already talked a little bit about the sequence of things that takes place in terms of starts with the looking at our goals and objectives, building level, goes through the Board of Ed, goes to the joint boards. Ultimately, each of the boards approve those segments of the operation budget. Sure. And then as we approach referendum, there's a total budget that everybody gets to say what they think about at the public hearing, and then there will be the referendum in May.
Now, as far as the district goes, what are you most proud of in the district?
Well, there are a number of things, ultimately. I think in the course of the time that I've been here, the focus for the school system is to have created for lack of a better term, a through line for continuity and consistency. So K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade, where our goal is to provide the highest quality educational experience for each of our students as they go through the program.
Right.
There are some programs that I was blessed to inherit when I got here. For example, the district had prioritized all-day kindergarten. Right. They'd prioritized a K through 12 world language program in Spanish. And we've continued to really focus on that through the curriculum renewal work to make sure that that really has some merit. So, for example, we're experiencing for the first time through the process of curriculum renewal that our students in middle school are leaving with credit, high school credit for Spanish 2 in middle school, and able to enter the high school at level 3 Spanish. So the program was designed initially to give every student opportunity to learn a language, and through the work that we've done with the world language staff, the curriculum renewal process, we've revamped the Spanish program. So kindergarten through 6th grade is equivalent to a level 1 Spanish program.
Okay.
And then 7th and 8th grade provide level 2 experience, so that kids who go through that continuously from kindergarten through 7th grade can in fact earn that credit, but they also have completed the same program that most other kids are taking Spanish 2 at a high school level. In most other places in the state. So when they start in high school as freshmen, they're starting at level 3, and they can advance through high school to get to the AP level, to a Spanish 5 level, or we also offer French and Chinese at the high school. So once they hit that AP level, or they've topped out in Spanish, they still have potentially 2 years to take a second language.
Wow.
Or other electives.
Right.
The other thing that we've done with our curriculum renewal process is that 7th and 8th grade, or 8th grade, typically there were some options for kids to be able to take algebra. But it didn't necessarily count as algebra credit as the same as high school because it wasn't necessarily the same course.
Right.
So we've gone back and we've revamped that so that the algebra that they take in 8th grade is the same as that they would take if they didn't take algebra and they go to the high school. So It's the same course, same quizzes, same tests, the whole works, and ultimately they get credit for that.
Okay.
We've also spent a lot of time really looking at how best to provide specialized instruction for our special ed population, our special needs population, those kids who have identified learning challenges, learning difficulties in one fashion or another. And we've really worked at trying to do that in-house as much as possible. So the extremes of that are that we have collaborated with Madison and Guilford to create a secondary transition program that we house here in Clinton in the Ace Hardware Shopping Center, called Strive. And it is for our 18 to 22-year-old special ed students who still require additional support. But we've greatly reduced the cost of that by doing it as a collaborative. We've also focused in on providing an intensive learning program for students who typically, might be considered what they call on the spectrum, on the autistic spectrum, and have, again, very specialized learning needs. And we've grown that program, but we've done it in-house. We took it back from the Regional Education Service Center at Learn, and we're doing it more cost-effectively in-house. So, we have about 220 students that are identified and about 16 kids that ultimately need to be placed outside the district, but we've been able to keep that number relatively small. And the kids that we are having to put in or having to place in other programs are just that we don't have enough resources to be able to do a singleton kind of program.
Now,
specialized.
I was going to say, as far as Jack Cross goes, how long have you been here? How long have you been superintendent?
I started as superintendent in January of 2009.
Okay.
I came to the district in the summer of 2007 as the assistant superintendent. So I was assistant superintendent for a year and a half, and the board hired me to take over as superintendent in January of 2009.
Obviously, you like it.
It has its challenges. It is never boring. And I work with fabulous people. We have a tremendous administrative team, and the work we've done even around our teacher evaluation process is uniquely different than the state's model. I feel like we've tailored it to really meet our needs and to really provide teachers with quality feedback. We're doing something we call instructional rounds, where the administrative team visits each of the schools to really look at what each of the schools are doing in terms of their instructional practice.
Sure.
And then we learn from each other. We continue to grow and learn. And so we have a fabulous instructional staff. We have a fabulous administrative staff. We've had a number of staff members who have been acknowledged, recognized, and asked to present at regional and national conferences in both technology and in literacy. We've had the middle school has been identified as a spotlight school through the New England League of Middle Schools. And a team just went up to their annual conference to present as well about what they're doing at the middle school. So we have, and we're building a new school.
There you go.
So-
Now, who is on your team?
On the administrative
Yeah.
team?
You?
Yeah, yes. Claudia Norman is our principal at the elementary school, at the
Okay.
pre-K 3 elementary school.
Okay.
And Joe Macrino is the assistant principal there. He is new this year.
Okay.
At Pearson, at our 4-5 school, is Angela Garasio.
Yeah.
She's been there
I know that
about the
name.
same length of time as I've been here. She's been here since 2007 as well. At the middle school, Linda Tucker and
Sure.
Mike Gordier are our middle school principal and assistant principal, respectively. Carrie Hagnes and Tyler Webb are our administrators at the high school. We also have I'll call him part-time athletic director, but he's really full-time in terms of the amount of time he spends.
Is that Kevin?
Kevin Rail.
All right.
And then I've mentioned already our business manager, Carolyn Dickey, and Frank Rossi, our technology director, and Mike Cozy is our maintenance grounds director, and then you mentioned Marianne O'Donnell, our assistant superintendent.
That's right.
So that's the team that
All right.
runs the district.
Well, speaking of teams that run the district, we're about to say goodnight, but before we do, I want to thank you for coming down.
Thanks, Peter.
Hopefully we'll do this again soon.
I would like that.
All
Thank
right.
you.
On behalf of Jack Cross, I'm Peter Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next week.